This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
All righty, welcome to episode 23 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we have Trey Wingo joining us. Trey, of course, of ESPN fame. Now he's out in Hawaii with a couple of podcast ventures and a new social media platform that we'll talk about. Trey, thanks so much for taking some time to come on the podcast today. I definitely appreciate it. But before we get rolling, I believe you're living in Maui. So how is the island doing about 2 months removed from the devastating wildfires?
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for having me on. And I appreciate you asking. Yeah, we're out here about half the year, and the island is doing well. It's recovering slowly. Obviously, the devastation in Lahaina is just awful, and the cleanup's going to take a long time. Lahaina strong, here Maui strong, but the people and the culture are vibrant and wonderful, and we're taking it day by day, and it's going to take a lot of time. And Lahaina is a special place. It's it was the capital of the kingdom when King Kamehameha ran everything. There was so much history. People talk about the tourism down there. There was so much history. So much of the island's history was there, and the challenge going forward is how do we preserve the history when we begin the rebuild. And we're still a long way from that, but I appreciate you asking. Things are going about as well as they can right now.
Yeah. My wife and I traveled to Hawaii about 2 years ago, and we stayed at a resort in Lahaina, and obviously very different from living there. But that vacation was where it is extra memorable for me because that was our first big trip after COVID started.
Right.
My wife also happened to be pregnant with our first son at the time. So like, it just kind of, that sticks with me, that trip. And everyone just seeing the pictures of Lahaina and the banyan tree over the summer was just heartbreaking to see. So we continue to send positive vibes and wishes to everybody and everything over there.
Yeah. And the banyan tree is beginning to flower again. It's an amazing story.
That's incredible.
It's phenomenal. It looks like that tree, which has been such a symbol of Lahaina for so long, is going to be with us for a long, long time. So that's great. That's
awesome. So we'll get into it now. We had your podcast co-host Chase Daniel on our podcast a little over a month ago, and as I looked through recent episodes of Chasin It with Chase Daniel and Trey Wingo, I've noticed an influx of Taylor Swift and Swifties in the headline. You guys you had Chase's former teammate and Taylor Swift's boyfriend on the podcast. So you don't have to get into the details exactly, but I am curious if you were able to, have you been able to reach the Swifties in those episodes? Like, have you seen a spike in clicks and downloads on those episodes in recent weeks?
Yeah, it was dramatic. There's no question about it. It was. I mean, it's a real thing. I mean, like, the Chiefs Jets Sunday night game was the most watched game since the Super Bowl. Like, look, I get it. And Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and, Stone Cold Chris Jones, they're awesome. But that bump is for a different reason. And, it's funny. When we had Travis on, we actually never said the words Taylor Swift. We never even mentioned those two words. And the only thing I asked him about it was, did you ever think it would become this thing?
Yeah.
And he said, absolutely not. That clip was picked up by E! Online. It was aired on Entertainment Tonight. It was in People Magazine. It was in Page Six. Side note, funny thing about being in People Magazine, my dad was one of the founding editors of People Magazine. So that was kind of a full circle moment. But it was really funny because we consciously never said the words Taylor Swift, and that clip went everywhere. It was kind of fun.
Have you been surprised by her ability to almost overshadow and humble the NFL at times in the last month?
She's a phenomenon. I mean, like, I got a text from one of my nieces that said, "What can you tell me about this Travis Kelce character? Is he good for my Tay-Tay?" Okay, like that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. Like, and I said, Travis is a great guy. I've known him forever. Blah blah blah. And she wrote back, "Cool, so we can go to the wedding, right?" Whatever. I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, the NFL is a $20 billion a year industry, and when she went to the first game in Kansas City against the Bears, the NFL pinned their TikTok account with 9/14, I think it was 23. Taylor was here. On the NFL's TikTok page, they had the announcement of Usher as the Super Bowl halftime show, and I think that video got 1.7 million views. The first shot of Taylor Swift in the Kelsey box got 15 million views. And then the video of Travis and Taylor leaving together, I think last time I checked, had over 20 million views. Like, it's insane.
Wild. It is. How is working with Chase? He does stuff with the NFL Network in addition to the podcast that you guys have. But what's his future in the media look like from your standpoint? Because I feel like every time somebody watches or listens to an interview, a show, or a segment that Chase Daniel does, they walk away from it impressed.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, he has a real knowledge of the game and a knowledge of the game in a way that maybe most people don't understand, because first of all, quarterback is obviously the most important position, but you don't hang around 14 years as an undrafted guy without really doing the work. And the thing that I love about talking to Chase, and this goes back to, like, I met him, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago now at this point. The thing that always impresses me about Chase is he'll look at tape and he'll see something that most people won't see in the way either the play is designed or the way the quarterback has gone through his progressions. And whenever we talk, you always go away that you've learned something that you didn't know before. And he presents it in a very sort of informal and entertaining way. And that's been a real fun to work with. Yeah,
we spoke to him about when you guys met, and he was on with you on Golic and Wingo. I think he co-hosted a full episode. How was that from your perspective? Like, what were your expectations when Chase Daniel was coming in to do a full radio show with you?
That was great, because obviously Golic and I wanted to talk football all the day anyway, so that made it easy. And he was with the Bears at the time, and that's when Matt Nagy was sort of in his heyday as the Bears head coach. Things were going well. But he was just really bright. It's funny though, our relationship goes back way before then. Like, Super Bowl 45 in Dallas. I get a text from Chase, and he's like, "Hey man, I got myself and 3 of my buddies. This was the Friday night before the Super Bowl, which is the ESPN party, right? The big ESPN Super Bowl party that they used to have every year." And he was like, "Hey," and I didn't remember this. He told me this in one of the podcasts. He goes, "Listen, I got myself and 3 friends. Can we come to the ESPN party tonight?" And I wrote him back 2 words: "Hell no!" Like ESPN guards those invites like the nuclear codes. Okay, so like I couldn't get some of my own family members into those parties, and here he is the night before the day of the party. "Hey, just me and 4 other dudes. What can you do for us?" So the basis of a relationship started with a text where I just said hell no to him.
So you have the podcast with Chase. You previously had Half Forgotten History. You did more than football. Now you have another podcast in the works, Making Waves, which will look at an alternate history for different sporting events. How have you enjoyed the freedom of the podcast space since leaving ESPN?
Well, I think that's the key word, right? That's the thing, freedom. Like, we do what we want, when we want, with who we want, and that's the most fun. I mean, that's the most fun for me. And the way things are right now, thank God, technology has sort of created this ability. You're on the East Coast, I'm out here in Maui, and we're doing this with a computer, a modem, a camera, and a good Wi-Fi and a ring light.
Right.
And it works. I mean, that's the beauty of it. And that's the fun part for me, is that it doesn't matter where I am. It just matters, can I connect with somebody and get the stuff out there? And that's been a lot of fun.
Do you miss being at ESPN?
No. And I don't mean that as a knock at all in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I was there for 24 years and I loved almost every second of it. But that was something that I enjoyed doing, and I loved it at the time. But it's not part of what I do anymore. So I wouldn't say I miss it. I have a lot of great friends still there, and I have a lot of people that I keep up with, and we text all the time. But I very much enjoy what I'm doing now.
Yeah, is it weird, almost like you were there for nearly a quarter century, which is a great run. But then when you leave, it's almost looked at as like how could you leave ESPN? Like what's going to happen to your future? Like, or how are you going to continue your career, as opposed to looking at it like you spent 24 years here. And that's almost something that should be celebrated, as opposed to just kind of focusing on the fact that, like, how could your career possibly continue without ESPN?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the beauty of, like you said, what we do, what the way the media is now. You don't have to be somewhere to sort of you control your own platform.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can be at ESPN or NBC or Fox or CBS or whatever, but there's a million other ways to connect with people, and that's sort of where we are now. So yeah, I thought at one point that I would never leave ESPN, that I'd be there forever. It was, things were wonderful, and I loved doing most of what I did. But for me now, this is just where I am in my life. This is much more the way I want to go about things.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the case for anybody that has a job that they like. When they're in that job, you think that you're never going to leave, but then you know, at some point things happen and changes are necessary at times. How was taking over for Mike Greenberg on ESPN Radio's morning show? Was it easier to have Mike Golic still on the show with you, or did that make it harder in a sense because the audience was so used to Golic with Greeny and kind of expected a certain chemistry or a certain dynamic that you now had to fill that void?
It was great for me because Mike and I, did NFL Live together for years. So there was a pre sort of relationship history, if you will, that we were able to sort of build off of. It was never a problem for me, and I'm hoping that Mike would say the same thing. I think he does. We talk quite a bit still. No, I was happy to be there with him. That the hardest part for me, honestly, was the time.
Yeah,
like for 21 of the 24 years I was there, I was on a completely different schedule. And I don't care. Like, Golic is a freaking machine. That dude can sleep anywhere and like fall asleep like that. That is not how I'm wired. So, it was really hard for me to try and stay up and watch some of the games, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. And then have that alarm go off at 3:15, 3:30 in the morning. That was a difficult switch. I'm not going to lie to you. I felt like a zombie at times. And the people that can do it, like whether it's in morning radio or the Today Show or whatever, God bless them. Like, good for you. I found out pretty quickly that was not something I was capable of doing for a long time.
Yeah, definitely a grind and a unique lifestyle to have to transition to those hours. Was radio something that you wanted to try, or was it something that you were just asked to try?
A combination of both. For example, no matter what happens or what happened in my career, I think at ESPN, I'll be remembered for two things. Starting NFL Live. We started that show in 2003, and I was with it up until 2017. And then obviously the COVID draft of 2020. I think that's what most people would say when they look. And I love both of those things. And I really loved doing the draft, and I really, really loved NFL Live. And, we that show started as a half-hour show on ESPN2 with no set time zone, with no set time space. It was Tuesday through Saturday, half hour on ESPN2 whenever they could put the show on. And we turned that to an hour-long show Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 Eastern on ESPN. And, the guys that we did that show with, we were real proud of that. And I was real proud of that. When they were going to break up Mike and Mike, which I still don't understand why they thought that was a good thing, because that was a machine. Some of the people in radio came to me and say, would you be interested in doing this? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll take a look at it and I'll think about it. And I did the show with Golic a couple of times, and we still had that chemistry we had when we did NFL Live. So that was fine. But I was hesitant because I loved my gig. I loved NFL Live. It was fun.
Yeah.
I had a family of people that I work with, whether it was Stink, Teddy, Herm, Darren Woodson, Ryan Clark, Damian Woody. Those are still all my friends today. We still talk all the time. So I was like, this is a real, Louis Riddick. This was a really good thing. Merrill and Jaws back in the day, Tim Hasselbeck, Jeff Saturday. So I was like, I'm not sure I want to do this. And someone who was a good friend of mine at ESPN said, just so you know, if you don't take this gig they're offering you, they'll hold it against you. And I was like, okay. So I said, fine, I'll do the gig. And then I knew pretty quickly that this was not going to be something that I wanted to do long term. So with about a year left, I said, this has been fun. I just don't think I can I don't think I want to do this anymore. I want to try something else. So the best way to put it is, I think I took the job for the right reasons and I walked away from it for the right reasons.
Would that bother you at all? Just like being there already for, at that point, 15, 20 years, kind of knowing that if you didn't take this job that they would hold it against you, or is that just the nature of the business?
Well, I think it's both. Like I thought I was trying to be a good employee. Say, look, this is not going to work for me. So I don't want to leave you high and dry. I don't want to be like, okay, thanks, I'm done, walking out the door. I tried to give them as much warning or as much advance notice as they wanted. And they did not see it that way. And that's fine. That's their choice. It's their company. But I thought I was doing the right thing. And I thought I was doing the gracious thing.
So then if we kind of pretend this is Making Waves, the Making Waves podcast for a minute, are you and Mike Golic still at ESPN today if you decided to extend your contract as a radio host?
Well, that is a great question, and I don't know the answer to that because, as you know, things have changed so dramatically.
Yeah.
Right. COVID hit, obviously, and that shut down everything for a while. And then the landscape has changed dramatically. For me, I never understood why they wanted Mike to leave. Like, he was embedded there. Like he'd been there since the beginning with, holy crap, with people before Greenberg that he was doing the show with, with Tony. And so that I don't understand, but again, the landscape has changed so dramatically. Like I can't answer that question because I don't think anybody knows anything about the industry anymore. And look at all the changes that have happened and the way people are trying to adapt. Right. We used to fly everybody in every week, from Herm would come in from Monterey, California, Stink would come in from Denver and they put them up in a hotel and then we do the show together on the set. Well, now half the time people are remote doing their things wherever they are because of the landscape and the way the economics of the industry have changed dramatically. So I don't know the answer to that. But I would imagine, given all the changes and the way things are, probably not.
Yeah. Do you think ESPN Radio is still a platform that can have a show like Mike and Mike that had that 10 years plus of success? Because like you look at your successors now, Max Kellerman, Jay Williams, Keyshawn Johnson, that was short-lived as well. And as you said, the landscape has changed, and it does feel as if ESPN doesn't prioritize radio the way they once did.
I think that's an accurate statement based on when there are no more O&Os. Owned and operated stations in ESPN Radio. And I think 98.7 in New York just ended their
yes,
right?
It's going to be one year left. They're going to get rid of 98.7 and go back to just AM radio 1050 and then focus on digital and focus on I believe the Michael K show will still be on Yes Network at that point, but they're going to get rid of 98.7.
So, that sort of, I guess that answers your question because that was the linchpin of everything. And there was one in Chicago and there was one in Dallas and they just don't exist anymore. So I think it's an absolute shift in the way they want to do it now. Was
it difficult to have to focus on those markets? Like, did you go in every morning saying like, we got to prioritize New York, we have to prioritize Chicago, we have to prioritize Dallas, or are you just kind of like looking at sports as a whole and picking topics based off what you think are the most important topics in sports that day?
Well, I can certainly say that there were times when that was suggested to us.
Yeah.
That, hey, let's hit this market at this time of the day and let's do this and that, which is fine. That's just business. Sure. No problem with that. But my perspective, I think Golic's perspective, and I don't want to speak for him or Junior or anybody, but I think we're all in agreement. Is like, we always try to do what we thought was the most interesting thing. And a lot of times I did line up. If the Yankees are doing well and the Knicks are continuing a dumpster fire, who doesn't like that, right? Who doesn't like some of that mess? But there were times when people say, hey, look, this is a good time slot. We do really well in this market with this stuff. So let's try and hit something there and do that there. And that's just business. That's just trying to keep things afloat. I get that.
I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but you sort of helped turn Greeny into a caricature of himself this year after you kind of upset the synergy in the NFL media world by reporting Aaron Rodgers to the Jets was a done deal. Was that fun or exciting to get a scoop like that?
Oh yeah, it's always fun. That's always fun. But it's funny. This was last late February or March, I guess it was, and I had it a couple of days before he went on the Pat McAfee show and announced his intention to play for the Jets.
Right.
And there were a lot of people who didn't think I knew what I was talking about, which is fine. And so, I was assuming he was going to say something on the Pat McAfee show, but I was texting Schefter. It's like, gotta tell you, like sometimes when you put something out there and you're waiting for that shoe to drop, there's some sleepless nights. And Adam was like, every day of my life. And I said, I don't know how you do it every day. I do it every once in a while. I don't know how you did it, but I did when he did announce that he was going to go play for the Jets this year. I did enjoy putting out a tweet the next day. It says, hope everyone has a great day. Just hope everyone has a good time today.
Yeah. Well, and Mike Greenberg certainly had a great day after that. He's been just all in on the Jets, all in on Aaron Rodgers ever since that. All Jets, all Aaron Rodgers, all the time for Greeny.
But it's so funny because, like, I don't say funny, that's not the right, but like, of course this happens to the Jets, right? Like the Jets can't have nice things, right? I mean, he doesn't make it through the first 5 minutes of the game. And it's remarkable. Like, the Stugatz, obviously, whenever the Jets would draft a quarterback, I would say, what do you think? And he goes, well, historically, I'm going to say they picked the wrong one because that's just the way things go, So you feel bad for Aaron. You feel bad for the Jets fan base who are all psyched up for this. But on the other hand, like, it's been fun to watch the Jets play this year. They make everybody come down to their level, and it's a street fight, and they will make it ugly and they will find a way to win. And that was a really impressive game on Sunday as we're taping this after the win over the Eagles.
Were you surprised by the reaction to the report? Like you said that there were some sort of naysayers. Did the amount of skepticism that came with reporting Aaron Rodgers to the Jets being a done deal, did that surprise you at all?
No, and I want to be clear. Someone else asked me this question before, and I said, well, I wasn't really paying attention. And the headline was Wingo scoffs at naysayers. I wasn't scoffing. I was just like, I wasn't paying attention. I knew the source was good. I knew the information was credible, and I knew it was going to happen. So I was just waiting for it to play out. So, no, I didn't. I didn't check my phone every day for my mentions. I just didn't do it.
Did you hear from anybody in Aaron Rodgers' camp after reporting it? Because obviously, like you checked in with Schefter. Aaron was. He doesn't seem to love most reporters or newsbreakers. That
is correct. That is a confirmation. As Adam said when he tried to one last time, and I think Rodgers texted him back, "Thanks, nice try to lose my number." You hear from people, sure. And what do you know? What are you getting? Like, well, it just trust me. Is all I could say.
So we saw Aaron on the sideline, on the field on Sunday, without crutches, playing catch before the Jets win over Philadelphia. Do you have any insight on his possible return to the Jets this season?
I do not. It would be historical.
Yeah,
I guess would be the way to put it. Jerry Rice was the first guy in the 90s to come back from tearing an ACL in the same season. And then late in the season, after catching a touchdown pass, he broke the bone in his kneecap. Coming back. So it's one thing great to try and come back, but if you rush something like that so dramatically, there's always the risk that something else is going to happen. So look, he says he's attacking it differently than anybody ever has. And I have no reason to not believe him because, as you said, we've seen him walking without crutches and throwing, but I would still be really, really surprised if he was able to come back and play in any way, shape or form this season.
You mentioned obviously that you don't really miss being at ESPN, but do you miss the fame of ESPN at all? Like hosting ESPN Radio's biggest morning show, anchoring SportsCenter, hosting NFL Live, doing all of that on the worldwide leader for nearly a quarter century. Like it's got to be somewhat ego serving to be in that position for so long.
Yeah, it can be. I don't miss any of that. And I don't want to be flippant about it. I loved it when I did it. It was great. I don't want to do that anymore. games are still fun for me. Like, I do call a bunch of events for the PGA Tour. I'll be doing some stuff for the Century Championship out here when they return in Maui in January, and that's going to be awesome. I did some stuff for NBC this summer, calling the Open Championship for them on one of their alternative broadcasts, and I do that. I enjoy live games. I enjoy that part of it. I enjoy being in the middle of something. But the idea of, coming up with a segment on Tuesday from 4:40 to 4:50 on NFL Live and then making something different on Thursday, it was great when I did it. I don't miss any of that. I always feel like there's two kinds of people in the business. You either like it or you need it. Make sure you're never one of the guys that needs it. Because if you need it, it'll always be the thing that you're chasing. It'll always be the thing that is the most important thing. And, I try not to ever make that the most important thing.
Similarly to ESPN radio, kind of the landscape of that changing. I think the landscape of SportsCenter has changed as well. It's not really what it once was. It's not necessarily appointment television. And when you think of all the great personalities and entertainers that have been part of the SportsCenter brand, Dan Patrick, Kenny Mayne, Stuart Scott, and then you think Linda Cohn is still there. Scott Van Pelt is still kind of doing it, although his show is a little bit different than a traditional SportsCenter. Right. But it doesn't seem like newer anchors have the same sort of celebrity that those from the 90s and even earlier in the 2000s have. So why do you think that is? Why has that changed?
Well, I mean, again, I think it all goes back to the landscape. Like there was a time in the 90s and the 2000s where we were the only place you could get the stuff, right? I mean, that we were it. And then Fox Sports started, but nobody else was doing this kind of stuff.
Right.
You can get that anywhere now. Like you can get it anywhere. So the challenge for the people doing it now is to try and find a way to make it seem different and unique. And that's not easy. I do think almost everything is based on going back to the way the landscape of people consuming media has changed. My last year on NFL Live, they went up and did a focus group and talked to people at Syracuse Newhouse School of Communication. And they were talking about this, and this. And they're like, well, what can we do to get you to watch TV longer? And most of the kids in the class said nothing. I mean, it's just they consume things differently. And it started about, 10 years ago. They consume media differently than I consumed it when I was growing up, when I was watching it, when I was younger in my career. It's just like you said, it's just different now. And it's not, I don't think it's anybody's fault.
Yeah.
It's just the way society has evolved. And it's the way it's just the lightning pace at which this stuff is cranked out and consumed now.
Right. I think it's much less about ESPN, say, not letting anchors develop as talent, and much more about just the fact that when SportsCenter airs, odds are the people that the audience that they're trying to reach already knows the scores, already has seen all the highlights on social media, and it just makes it a little bit less necessary than it once was.
This is now a broadcasting center.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it is. This is now, a broadcasting center right now, and you have it with you wherever you go.
How much writing did you do for the SportsCenters that you anchored?
How much almost all of it. Like, the shot sheets actually would come in. For those that don't know, a shot sheet, if you're doing a highlight, a PA, production assistant, or I don't know what they call them now, would hand you a shot sheet. Sometimes you get it seconds before you went on the air. So that was something that was, but lead-ins or pieces. I used to love writing pieces for when I did the 6 o'clock show and a couple of, you didn't do a lot of them on the later shows because it was more highlight driven and analysis driven. But I really enjoyed the writing. That was
were there writers available to you?
No.
How much time would you spend writing on an episode of SportsCenter?
Well, it's interesting, and I certainly can't speak to what it is now. But when we did the 6 o'clock show, we'd have a production meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning, and sort of finagle and wait things through the day and go through that. So, but there were times, and I'm sure this still happens, where you have a show set up and you have the rundown, everything's going to be here and there, and then news breaks and everything you were doing goes out the window, and you got to adjust on the fly. So it was a process that the old, and I don't think they do this anymore. Like the old meetings for the 11 o'clock show were like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you were there, watching the games and trying to figure out what was going on. And a lot of that time was spent writing the lead-ins and everything else that you needed.
Yeah. You talk about things kind of changing and not necessarily going to plan on SportsCenter. Was anchoring SportsCenter with Bob Ley on September 11th, 2001. Would you call that your most memorable, or we'll say that the broadcast that stands out maybe more than any others?
Yeah. And I know I'm glad you brought that up. I regret not mentioning that when I mentioned NFL Live and the COVID draft of 2020. Yeah, there's no question. Bob and I still text each other every year on that day, just to, hey, hope you're doing well. I'll never forget that day. I was going out for a run, and I got called back into the house, and they said a plane just hit the Trade Center. I'm like, whoa, what's that going on? And then we're sitting and watching, and then the other plane hit. I'm like, okay, this is clearly not an accident. And as I'm leaving the house to go to work that day, she yells out the window, a bomb just went off at the Pentagon, which we turned out later was another plane hitting the Pentagon. I remember driving to work that day thinking, what the hell am I doing going to work today? Like, why am I, like, what's the point? What does anybody care about anything we have to say when we were under attack? And there was a big debate that day in the newsroom about, should we do a show? Should we not do a show? Should we cede all our time to ABC so they can have, and all our channels to ABC so we can get as much coverage of this as possible? And I was definitely of the opinion that we shouldn't do a show. What can we do that would be anything? And Bob, to his undying credit, was very adamant, said, look, I hear you. I understand that. But what we do is we report on the news as it relates to sports. And there's a lot of things that are being affected in the sports world by what just happened. And I think we need to go on and do that show. And so we did, and we were just going to go on for like, I don't know, 30 minutes or something. But then sort of things became evolved, and they said, can you and Bob stay on a little longer? Can you and Bob stay on a little longer? And I think we did a couple hours that night. And then all that week, Bob and I did shows that week. And yeah, memorable is an interesting, I think that's the most appropriate word, because there's no way you'll ever forget it.
Right.
And I want to be clear. I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, I enjoyed Bob and I being together and doing that show. I mean, I believe our intro to that SportsCenter, that first day, still runs at the museum at 9/11. Yeah. We taped an updated thing for them as well. So, I mean, it's a part of history now. And Bob made the right choice. It was absolutely, a lot of people had different feelings, but Bob was very adamant about it. And he was the voice of reason that day. And I was very proud to do that show and those shows all that week with Bob.
Yeah. Obviously you said that you didn't want to do it, which I think is certainly there's a fair argument to be made that at that time that you shouldn't have done it. And looking back on it, I think it's at least good that it's something that you can look back on it and be proud of those shows. But what was your comfort level in the moment of doing the show? Because sports is supposed to be fun. SportsCenter is supposed to be entertaining. Here you are tasked with anchoring this sort of trivial show in one of the worst moments in the history of the country. How do you make sure that you strike the right tone?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of laughing. There was nothing. I mean, we just wanted to try and be as clear as possible about what we knew. And, the big thing that week was, would the NFL play that following Sunday? And they ended up not playing. And a large part of that was, the Sunday after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, the NFL did decide to go on and play. And Pete Rozelle, who was the commissioner of the NFL at that time, said it was the biggest mistake he ever made in his life. And, everybody was sort of saying, I can remember on that first night, people were still planning on playing football games in the South that Saturday. And they were like, well, this affected these people up here. It's not part of where we are. And then, then it sort of began this rolling effect of what had happened. And once the NFL decided not to play that week, there was no turning back for anybody. If the NFL, which is, whether you like it or not, is the biggest, sporting business entity in this country by a mile, if they weren't going to play, how could anybody else justify playing? So once the NFL decided they were not going to play that week, that was pretty much game over for anything that was going to happen that week in any way, shape, or form.
And then you mentioned earlier about the 2020 NFL draft. How was hosting that, and just like, what that meant for sports fans and giving people the opportunity to kind of consume something new after having no live sports for a while, and just kind of being the face of what was such a big moment there to give sports fans something to watch and something to enjoy, something to kind of take a break from having to focus on COVID coverage and things like that.
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, 53 days before the draft, we had this whole thing set up in Vegas, which we eventually used, or they used a couple of years later.
Yeah.
This whole thing was all this massive stage and everything was great. And, because when I took over full coverage of that in 2017, it was nuts in Philadelphia. And then it got even bigger in Dallas. Then in Nashville was insane. So we were expecting just, enormous crowds roaming the streets in downtown Vegas. And then we got the word that, that wasn't going to happen. So in 53 days, and a lot of credit goes to a lot of people that people don't know, like a guy like Seth Markman, Brian Ryder. They pulled together this unbelievable technological feat over 50 days to get everything set. We had over 300 potential draftees, either in their parents' house or somewhere else with remote capabilities. Roger was doing things from his couch in his basement, and none of us knew what was going to happen because the NFL Network couldn't get into their studios. So it became a combination of ESPN's coverage of the draft and NFL Network's coverage of the draft. We had Kurt Warner, Michael Irvin, and Daniel Jeremiah from Move the Sticks as part of our coverage, along with Mel, Booger, and Louis Riddick. And I was the only person in the studio. I was in the studio in Bristol. There were 2 camera operators and a stage manager, and that was it. And we had a big row of monitors over there with those 6 guys in it. None of us knew how it was going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us, we'd never done anything like this before. And like in the millions of podcasts and tapings I've done since then, there's always a glitch. There's always something that goes wrong. Nothing went wrong technologically. It was unbelievable. In fact, the only mistake was a mistake I made. I think it was on day 3, because normally when you're on the set with Mel and Booger and Lewis and whomever's doing the draft, there's this sort of joking camaraderie and all this kind of stuff. And you can throw it out to the table and say, all right, what do you think about this pick? And then someone jumps in, they catch your eye contact, and it just goes. We had very specific ideas. Okay, I had to ask a pointed question to everybody. Lewis, what do you think about this pick? Kirk, why is this quarterback good? Michael, what don't you like about this wide receiver? Daniel, what is it that intrigues you about this linebacker prospect? There was one time on day 3, I think it was, where I said, hey guys, what do you think of the pick? And everyone was like, and there was this momentary, is he talking to me? Is he talking to someone else? I don't know. And I said, hold on. So that was the only thing that messed up was me. I messed that up. And, but it was amazing how well the people that put that draft together were able to do it on such short notice. And now, of course, it's routine, right? We all do this now. No one had ever tried anything like that. We didn't even know if we had the bandwidth capable of doing it. We had no idea if we were going to be able to pull it off.
Do you have a favorite episode from NFL Live, a day that was most memorable? Maybe even the Princess Bride episode that you guys did?
Yeah, that was really fun. That was a good one because Teddy and Stink and I were all huge Princess Bride fans, and it was completely organic, right? It wasn't something that we had planned. I think in one of the highlights of one of the analysis piece, like Stink said something, and then Teddy heard it, a movie reference, and then he said something. Well, I came back with something, and then it became like a competition, right? Who can get the most Princess Bride references into the show? And that's what made it fun. It was completely organic. It wasn't planned. It wasn't like, hey, you say this, then I'm going to say this. It was completely on the fly, on the set. We're on our phones, on the computer, looking up as many Princess Bride quotes as we can in the commercial breaks or when he's doing something. And then they said, hey, you try this movie. You try this movie. And it was like, we could do that, but then it wouldn't be the same because it wasn't. I mean, we didn't set out to do a Princess Bride show.
Yeah.
It just sort of happened, so that one would be way up there for sure. There's another one. This is going to sound sort of goofy, but in 2014, we ran a feature piece about this guy who wrote to football players and asked about their best day, and what was their best day of their life. And they read some of the letters. And then we came back. It was me, Teddy, Herm, and Damian Woody. And we just sort of went around and said, what was your best day? What was your best day? And, Damian talked about when he went on The Biggest Loser, because it helped him sort of get in control of stuff. And I feel bad. I can't remember. Mark Brunell was there as well. It's something about watching his kids play. And it gave me a chance to think about something that was very unique to me. Our first daughter, our daughter was born with a sort of an auditory processing issue and a learning disability. And the doctor said when we took her home, I said, well, is she going to be able to go to school and do all this stuff? And we don't know. But through great effort on her part and great teachers and caregivers in the Avon Public School System in Connecticut, she went from being in special classes to graduating in the National Honor Society when she graduated from high school. Sorry. And the day she got the phone call from her first choice in college saying she was accepted and got a scholarship, that was a good day.
When was that?
That was in 2014. Yeah, that episode was in 2014 because it was about her last year in college. She graduated in 2010. So it was either 2013 or 2014.
Oh, that's really cool. Congratulations to you and her. That's really awesome.
Thanks.
What about so you hosted NFL Live from 2003 to 2018. I'm curious. 2017.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there was, in that time period, was there a shift in how hits and concussions were covered? Because obviously Countdown moved away from the jacked up segment that they had, but was there a point that you remember where NFL Live was kind of told almost to start treating highlights of big hits and collisions differently?
Well, NFL Live was sort of a during the week show. So outside of a recap of the Monday night game, there weren't a lot of highlight time things. It was more of analysis packages and breaking down what we saw. I'll never forget one year we were doing something with Trent Dilfer, who was working on the show at the time. And, someone got dinged. He said, well, I don't think I got a concussion. I just got dinged. And we sort of had to learn that is a concussion or a post or subconcussive hit that leads to concussions, right?
Yeah.
So it was this learning process. It wasn't a specific time or a day, but it was sort of an evolution of just understanding the more and more you learned. And what Chris Nowinski is doing with his great stuff with Concussion Foundation in Boston has sort of opened up a lot of eyes. So it's just a rolling awareness. And I think one of the real changes was when people started sort of self-reporting concussions. Hey, something's not right. I don't feel good. Get me out of the game. And there were a couple times when big name players decided, hey, I need to get out of the game here for a second. That was an indication, okay, the tide has really turned. And I want to be clear, it's always going to be a sliding scale, because if you are a superstar quarterback that has signed a $150 million contract, it's much easier for you to say, hey, I'm not right, take me out, than the gunner on the special teams who's dying to get a second contract and maybe do something in the NFL. So there's always going to be this sliding scale of what you're comfortable with doing. But I think for the most part, most people now understand how significant that is, and it has to be treated very differently than it was even 10 years ago.
With the way that concussions and hits are viewed differently now, especially even just from 10 years ago. And I would imagine things are going to look different 10 years from now and 10 years from that. Where do you personally view the NFL going long-term? Is it always going to still be a very physical sport and product? Or, I mean, is it possible that 40 years from now, it's a league of flag football teams?
I don't know if it's ever going to go that far, because people, like my son played college football and he was an offensive lineman, and Damian Woody and him will say the same things. What I loved about being an offensive lineman is I get to beat somebody's ass for 4 quarters. I get to physically assault somebody and it's okay. So I'm not sure that ever goes away completely, but it's certainly like, look at the game last night. The hit that was called roughing the passer on Josh Allen. It was
right.
And it's hard on the officials because we keep asking the officials to do more and more in less time. And I think that's unfair. But none of that hit by Okereke was anywhere near Josh Allen's head and neck. And Terry McCauley, who does a great job for the Sunday Night Crew, said, yeah, that wasn't it. But they're always going to overcall that, right? That's the league mandate. But I will tell you, officials know that it's an impossible task to try and figure that out. There's a former official who I won't give you his name, but he now works in television. And he once told me, he said, Trey, when I was doing the NFL and I was calling games, I thought we did a great job. And then I started watching games the way you guys watch games. And I'm like, man, we do a terrible job. And it's almost unfair because all of us watch games and we get to see it in this sort of 360-degree view where we see every single angle. They see it linearly. Right? They see it like this, and they have to make a split-second decision. I was flying back once from something in LA, and I was sitting next to a guy who was logging a game. I said, "Oh, do you work for a team?" He goes, "Oh, I'm actually an official. I'm a ref in the NFL." I said, "Oh, cool." And this was right after the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Saints. The non-call on Nickel Roby-Coleman that would have set up the game-winning field goal with time expiring for the Saints to go to the Super Bowl that year against the Patriots. And instead the Rams went, and he was like, I was on the field and none of us saw it. And we all watch it. Like, how could you miss it?
Right.
Like, how could you miss such a blatant late hit? Well, they're watching a million different things, and it's not as easy as people think. And it's really, really hard sometimes. What looks so blatantly obvious to us is so much more difficult for them to process. And they're processing it because of this emphasis on, concussion issues. So that's why I really, and they're starting to do this in the NFL. The Sky Judge, which has been shot down a couple of times, but they do it. They do the expedited reviews. I wish they would do more of that because I think it really helps the officials and it takes them out of a very difficult situation.
Did you ever hear from a complaint from Roger Goodell or his office or the league for something that you had covered on or said on NFL Live, maybe even the radio show, whether it was criticizing an official or anything like that?
I can remember, not me specifically, but I can remember there was an incident, and I think it was in the Adrian Peterson, Ray Rice era, Greg Hardy, where there were a lot of domestic issues going on. And one of the analysts on NFL Live said, I didn't like the way it was handled and how the Ray Rice thing was. He said, I think it's time for a new commissioner. And that got back to us for sure. That not directly, but indirectly, like, you might want to watch that. So there are certain, but the NFL is a multi-$20 billion a year industry for a reason, and they know what they're doing. So there's been a few times for sure when people didn't like that.
You mentioned earlier about still enjoying doing live events. Was play-by-play something that you would have liked to do more of when you were at ESPN? I know you did the arena football for a bit. Yeah,
I did. And, I covered the U.S. Open and the Open Championship for 7 years. Those were great summers. I did our digital coverage of that. That was awesome. And people are like, well, how many people are watching it? I'm like, I don't care. I'm getting it to do it. That was the fun part. I got to do it. And, you go to these great open venues. We went to St. Andrews twice. We went to Muirfield. It was just wonderful, and Bethpage Black and, the Olympic Club in San Francisco, Marion in Philadelphia. That was really, really fun. It was just really, really fun. I always thought that I was better as a host than I was at play-by-play. But I did love, and we called some tennis for the U.S. Open and Wimbledon as well. That was fun. I did really like that. Toward the end, I really enjoyed that more than anything. I really, really
did. Could you ever see yourself working full-time for a network again?
I mean, you never say never, but again, I'm very comfortable with my situation. And
Yeah.
I like the flexibility, what I do now that affords me, but I'll always, I had an opportunity to do something last year and a half ago, and I just didn't feel like it was the right thing for me to do at the time. But you never say never. But I'm
Sure.
I'm very happy and very comfortable with the way things are for me right now.
Do you have any kind of looking from afar? Do you have any thoughts on ESPN's decision to recently go all in on Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee as sort of the two main faces of the network now?
Well, I mean, they can do whatever they want. I think they've been in on Stephen A. for about 8 years now, to be perfectly honest. And Pat's a freaking thunderball. So I mean, it would make all the sense in the world for them to go all in on Pat McAfee. Pat is ubiquitous and sort of omnipresent at this point. And he's the only guy I know who can do a show in a black tank top and make it look okay. So, they do a great job. They do a great job of reaching their audience. So, good for them.
So from your experience, at least of dealing with ESPN executives and higher ups, do you think that they'll eventually sour on Pat's shtick and especially considering Aaron Rodgers is somewhat polarizing contributions to the show, and
a little bit.
Subsequently, those are polarizing contributions to ESPN. Is that something that you could see the executives not necessarily liking?
Maybe, but it's polarizing also brings in viewers.
Yeah.
Right. It brings in viewers. It's like the old line when Howard Stern was on WNBC in New York. They polled the audience. It was a scene from the Howard Stern movie. And they were like, we polled the audience and we asked the people that hated him, why do you listen? I want to hear what he says next. The people that loved him, why do you listen? I want to hear what he says next. So polarizing isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, definitely not necessarily a bad thing.
Revenue.
Yeah, I think it's just maybe not something that you've seen much from ESPN before.
No, look, they'll as long as it's making them money, they'll be okay with it. The moment it doesn't make money for them, they won't be okay with it. And that's fine. It's a business. It's a business.
Sure. What do you have going on with the Stunt app, and how'd you get involved with that?
Yeah, this is really cool. I ran into the guy who sort of developed it. This guy named Josh Carney. And for those that don't know, Josh was the guy who founded the technology for YouTube TV. So he's sort of been in the intricacies of how this all works for a long, long time. And he ran into me and Mark Schlereth, and we met up at the Super Bowl. We started communicating. And Mark, myself, Ron Jaworski, Merrill Hodge, Michael Irvin, and Michael Silver are all sort of owners of this platform, along with Josh and the development team. Basically, for lack of a better term, it's an app where you can be whatever you want to be in terms of sports. You can have your own live rooms, your own live shows, post any video you want. It's sort of Twitter without all the other stuff, right? Like sometimes it's hard to I'll never call it X. It's always going to be Twitter. You don't say you X'd something. I tweeted something.
Right.
I posted it on Twitter. You don't say you X'd something. It's always going to be Twitter. And so it's basically just sports, and it's a chance for you to sort of create your own superstardom if you want. There's a lot of fun things there. We're doing some trivia contests this week. It's just the Stunt app. You can download it either at Google Play if you're an Android guy, or in the App Store if you're on the iPhone. Mark and I do a show every Monday on that app, 6:00 Eastern, recapping the NFL. About to put the promo video up for that. Thank you for reminding me. But it's fun. It's a great, fun platform, and the guy knows what he's doing. Josh and his team know exactly what they're doing, and it's just going to be an outlet for people that just want to talk sports, that don't want to get dragged down on all the other stuff. It's about the games. It's about the action. It's about who did this thing, who didn't do this thing, and why they didn't do this thing, or why they did do that thing. And I think that's the approach we want to take with the Stunt app.
So would you say that Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, did it make the Stunt app seem like a more interesting opportunity?
I certainly think that is something that we hope is absolutely true. Yeah. Look, he's a gazillionaire. He can do whatever he wants. I miss the old Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I miss the way it was before. I never got the for you or following. Like, if I wanted it, I'd follow it. Okay. Don't do this for me. You don't do it for me. You're doing it for you. Just put my people on my timeline. So yeah, it's just an opportunity for people to get out there without all the crap, without all the garbage. Just go out there and chop it up in sports. And hey, if you think you have a hot take or a hot ability to draw an audience, go up there, start your own show, start your own live room, and who knows, maybe someone will catch on.
Yep. All right. Well, best of luck with it. Trey, you were great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Brandon, anytime. Thank you, man.
That is Trey Wingo. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.